This is the Geekarific Gabfest, Geek Gab, with your host, Daddy Warpig and RemipunX. We are back. That's right, Geek Gab, every Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 1 hour of all fun, no work, bringing you the absolute best in Geekarific Gab. Anything geeky goes today, and I want to touch on this in just a moment. Today we have a super secret mystery unknown AAA game developer on the show, but our co-host Gorinal is not on the air. He is instead shamefully watching football, so we can all boo him in the comments. I'm reminding you, by the way, as always, you can catch me, your host, at the House of Geekery, daddywarpig.com, or follow me on Twitter at daddy_warpig, and my co-host RemipunX, you can also follow her on Twitter at RemipunX. The links are in the description. Speaking of Remi, why don't you say hi to the folks while I stop and take a quick sip of water?
Good evening, everybody. This is Remi, RemipunX on Twitter and pretty much everywhere else on the internets. I wanted to let you guys know tonight my capabilities are going to be slightly different than normal. I asked for questions ahead of time because we are down a co-host, and I am only able to do so many tabs at once. So we have an awesome list of questions. I do normally like to, hey Ralph, I do normally like to touch on the questions that are asked in the chat, but it's you guys get talking really fast and there's only so much I can do. So I appreciate everybody who's asked questions ahead of time. I'm going to try and make sure everybody's questions get answered. Folks in the, hi Marco, folks in the chat, if you guys do have questions, try and shoot them to me on Twitter. I'm going to try and keep up with them, but I can't do the chat and Twitter and everything else. So bear with me if you get overlooked. I preemptively apologize for that. I am going to go ahead and introduce Mighty, who is our guest for the evening. And just let you guys know, tonight is for fun. This isn't, you know, oh my gosh, happenings or this or that. We're just going to have a good time, talk about the industry. There is a big curtain between what they do and what's visible to us, and we're going to just pull the curtain back a little bit and hopefully have a good time while doing it and get our nerd on. So I'm going to hush, let Mighty share the information that he wants to share with you guys, and then we're going to roll into questions, and it'll be a good time.
Oh. Hey everyone, Remi basically introduced me. I think I want to keep quite minimal to who I am, but yeah, that's all. You know, I'm not great at this.
Oh, you're going to be fine. It's okay. And I promise our audience will be on their best behavior, right, guys? Everybody's going to behave, and it's going to be a good time. If you guys are ready, I can start rolling with the questions that we have for the evening so far. Is that cool with you?
Go for it. That sounds great. I don't have anything.
Okay. First off, first person who hit me up on Twitter was Julie Monroe, which is at, I'm going to say this wrong, but at Noin007. She asked, with such diminishing returns on graphics at such a high cost, why do we still see AAA focusing so much on graphics in games? Why are visuals made such a big deal out of over gameplay and other things that really add, for a lot of gamers, add value to the game above and beyond, ooh, it's shiny?
That's quite obvious, but visuals are first impressions, obviously. And with the newest gen, you want to show them off, so people are going to like sink so much into visuals. So basically, that's your first impression. Good production values will, in a lot of people's means, good game. So that's literally all it is, good visuals. Or visuals could also mean many things, but from a business standpoint, it's obviously to show the game off, but to also do things that are possible, such as convey environment, etc. But yeah, if it's for money wise, it's basically to show it off, to make it look nice, to show it's better than the other horse in the stable.
And when they're working on, I'm going to ask a lot of questions about advertising just because that's the world that I'm most interested in with it. When it comes to doing graphics and things like that for the game and actually figuring out like what is compatible. I'm a PC gamer, so more than console. Is that even a thought like, hey, most gamers own this particular thing, we need to make things that are compatible to that? Or is there a push towards let's make the shiniest, most graphically heavy thing possible and they'll catch up to us?
Well, that it really depends on what they set out to do. If it's an exclusive, obviously you're showing off an exclusive. If it's like nowadays, with PCs getting better, then they're obviously becoming like more games going to that. It's really to do with what's doing the best, what's selling the most. You want to put on the best seller.
That totally makes sense because it ultimately it is an industry and it is about businesses making money and things like that is as much for us as fans that we're passionate about it. And I feel comfortable saying most developers start out at least as gamers and fans of video gaming. And then eventually I think it does actually turn more into a daily job and less of a work of love. But do you think that it works like that? I mean, do most people come into it because they play video games and are really passionate about it, and then it sort of evolves into, hey, this is my job, I need to make an income?
Well, actually, I've never met a dev that isn't a gamer, from my point of view. It's, I'm trying to word this now. It's when people coming from there, they're always, bright-eyed, excited, I can't wait to do this, yay. And then, of course, it's, shit, I'm sorry, I'm terrible at this. It's when a hobby or something that becomes a job, your views obviously going to change on it. But naturally, if you want to make games, it's because you like playing games. I don't see the point of going to a job you don't like. If you're not interested.
This is the thing. You just said something that really irritates me about a lot of modern businesses. I think is really short-sighted because I see this in the publishing industry as well. You're talking about everybody wants to make money, and so they're pushing big titles that they can be blockbusters and they can make money on. And my opinion is, you can survive as a business with a wide range of different games so long as you budget accordingly. I mean, let's say you're EA and you want to release a slate of games. You set up your blockbusters. You tell the you tell the studio or you tell the developers, hey, this is the budget. We expect it to make this much back. Go for it. But then you can say, all right, well, we're going to have some games that aren't going to be another Mass Effect or aren't going to be another Call of Duty, and developers can make those games. We're perfectly happy making those games, but the budget that we're going to put towards them is smaller because the return as far as raw dollar amount is smaller. And then you have even smaller games like really, really small indie games that you don't have to put a ton of money into developing, but will still bring back the percentage return on those is still high enough to justify investing money in them. And the notion that every game has to be Mass Effect or it's not worth doing, has to have Mass Effect returns or it's not worth doing, I think is poisonous. I think it is destructive of the business environment. I think it ruins really great games that feel like they have to become Mass Effect or Gears of War to be accepted at that level, and it leaves a lot of awesome games unmade. I see this same notion in the publishing industry where they want everyone to be another Stephen King or another Jim Butcher or you won't get published, when the fact is they could quite easily support a number of mid-list or indie authors as long as they were budgeting the advances and everything correctly. You don't have to have everything be a blockbuster in order for things to be successful, and it irritates me to see.
This is actually something I read a lot of, and I don't think a lot of people understand. the blockbusters essentially fund the new projects. You know, if we wait for like say FIFA every year, you wouldn't have got say Dragon Age Origins all those years ago. Or that's obviously what I see. So it's so these big titles are the reason these new things get tried every now and then. And if that's successful, they obviously going to get more hands-on with it to try and increase its profit margin. Hence, Dragon Age Origins to Dragon Age 2, for example, they got more hands-on because they saw the profit in it. Or the way Dead Space developers have less freedom, the more famous their game gets, because obviously it's got more fan rate. You know, they want to try and broaden it as much as possible, but they're not trying to bring in a new crowd. They want more of what they've already got, and I think that's the problem.
Movies do the same thing too. Now it's all pushed towards big blockbuster Avengers or Transformers, and a lot of times your smaller movies are getting pushed off the slate. So it's not something that is just unique to video games. It's in the publishing world, it's in movies, and it's in video games, obviously. I don't know about music or other comic books, whatever, but yeah, it is clearly it's a pernicious attitude that is spread among a lot of different people, and I really hate it. It just gets under my skin. Go ahead, Remy. Sorry, that's...
Oh, no, that's totally okay. Well, and this kind of is it's slightly connected to that. I'm going to try and kind of word things so that they flow together a little bit. But Rasha M., who is Nerd Girl Games, heart you lots, she asked, do you think AAA publishers need to reconnect with your audience? We've had a lot of things on Twitter and interaction with developers who have said things that are, you know, and I will be the first to say most of them are writers, not developers. A lot of them are writers for games, not the guys that are actually crunching code, but or girls, not to be sexist, that they've said things that are hurtful and that sound like they really don't support the folks that go out and actually buy their games. Do you think that having a connection with the audience is a necessity, or is that something that we've sort of taken for granted and that doesn't necessarily have to be there?
Well, the first thing for is you brought up writers. They're not as involved, obviously. I mean, the story, when it comes to a game, the story is one of the first things that gets sacrificed to make it more like a game if we have to. The second thing is, yes, they need to. It's hard to fathom that so many people behind the game, but I do believe connection is sure. I do believe after what's been happening, they're gonna try and attempt to go for a more direct approach. I'm not too sure myself, but that's what I think.
I think from what I've seen, this is just my impression of interviews I've seen of developers, that developers are very much concerned with making a great game that the audience will love. That is, it seems to be with most developers I've read interviews of or whatever, that seems to be their passion. They want to make something that other people, other gamers like themselves usually, will really, really get into and really, really love. And whenever I see an interview with an executive at a publishing company, and publishing companies like EA, Activision, they don't make games, they don't program games, they just take the games that other people make. Sometimes they invest in them, so you have the development money. They take the game, they put it in boxes, they put it on store shelves, they do the advertising for it, and then they get most of the profit. I'm not complaining about that. I'm not saying that's bad. Obviously, they are serving some need, or they wouldn't be surviving, or studios wouldn't be signing up with a publisher. They feel they need that, and that's their decision. So I'm sure it's a correct one, because they know more about their business than I do. But I don't see executives at publishing companies being as passionate at providing good quality games to gamers as I see from developers. They just don't seem to have that drive to want to make something that is great. They want to make something that is awesome. They want to give it to their audience and connect with them. They just don't seem to be any concerned with that. They just want to make money, and if it is, and people who read my Twitter feed know I don't have a problem with people making money at all, but there is a way to make money that invests long-term in your relationship with the audience, and that's something Valve does very well. And there's a way to make money that is a short-term cash grab that destroys the relationship with your audience. And I think that Activision and EA are really high on the list of companies that are destroying their relationship with the audience. And then, unfortunately, Ubisoft just seems to have vaulted the field and landed at #1 of people making mistakes in order to make money. They're destroying their relationship with their audience, and I really find that distasteful. I think that's foolish and it's short term.
One of our viewers actually asked, Lloyd D. Boy, number 8157 on the Blockbot. He actually asked, why are suits trusted more than the programmers? I don't know how many face-to-face meetings or things like that you deal with in your position, Mighty, but do you feel that on your end, from the audience side of things, we sort of feel like people like, the example of EA and things like that, there are good guys in suits. I mean, we've got Schaefer and things like that are good, but there are things like EA and stuff like that just seem to not care at all. Do they make you guys that are actually creating the games feel that lack of care as well?
Actually, how can I? It's the first thing is no one wants to make a bad product. Of course, that's like that's 101. But the publishers want money. Quality be damned at some points. It's the trust issue is because a lot of the time we've got our news filtered through a source, so it's blown up proportion. Again, these companies have messed up, and they continue to mess up because they're big companies. They don't understand. They're run by businessmen. They don't. It's from my end. It's a lot different from your end, so to speak, because my view of it's coloured. The suits themselves, they have a job to do. It doesn't matter if you agree with they're nice people or not. They got a job. Their job's to see whatever regulations are put down, or if they're meant to get hands-on. It's bad quality. I'm asking this catch up now. When a game's made, it depends if it's a licensed game, it's going to have less care because they're going to hope it sells on its license. If it's something else, of course, it's going to have more care put to it. But it literally comes down to the individual publisher, the time, money, budget. It all depends. It's literally just a matter of a matter of circumstance. No, but this is something that lots of people misunderstand, that no one wants a bad product, ever.
About that. How much power, and I'm not talking about wholly owned studios, like Visceral Games is wholly owned by EA, they founded it, so obviously they have absolute power over it. But how much power in a relationship with a independent studio, how much power does the publisher have to dictate deadlines and budget and things like that?
Depends how much they own it, how much they've invested. I'd say, given a lot of studios today, obviously wholly owned, I'd say they mostly have all the power unless someone really pushes for something like Last of Us did with the box art, or someone really pushes for this can't be done. They basically have most of the power. Obviously, they're giving you their money to make a game. You're playing with their money. That's how it works.
Now, with the relationship that there is with publishers and with the media and the entire huge umbrella that is the industry, Rasha, who is Nerd Girl Games, asked another question, which was just curious as to why more publishers don't follow Nintendo's example with Nintendo Direct. As a developer, looking at how Nintendo is doing things, do you see that being better for the creative process and for the creation process? Is that something that the industry could possibly move towards?
I'm not sure. Usually you see them take after the winning formula straight away, obviously, because it's follow the leader kind of thing. As for this example, I couldn't tell you. It's decision, or it seems risky, or but I actually, it's literally down to them and how a company works. I don't see why they couldn't. I don't know why they aren't. It's really odd, that one is. I mean, you could start saying about Steam and Origin. Why isn't Origin more like Steam? But it's the same thing. So I have no idea.
Because Origin really wants you to play Bejeweled. Every time I log in, it's like, you should play this game. I'm like, no, I really don't want to, but thanks. Um, and last question from Julia Monroe. She asked, how much does political correctness influence your work? Obviously, again, you're dealing with writers creating the premise of things, but when it comes to actually sitting down and doing character creation and things like that, how much of that is a concern? Do you really sit around and think, oh, we might be showing too much thigh in that particular costume, or is that a secondary thought?
It comes down to how much moral, I'm quoting that, moral outrage there is, how much it is taking up a portion from us, and if they decide to buckle. But from what I've heard recently, after the past 4 months of this shit, I'm pretty sure they're more confident in their decisions now because they've seen a pushback against the political correctness bullshit brigade. So, but usually you didn't see political correctness much. I mean, you saw it now and then, but there aren't really many instances, are there? So, not really. It depends on the age you're aiming at as well. Of course, that's a huge factor.
Sorry, and that is why I can't have multiple tabs. I lost my mute button there for a second. Um, and I think that that's great, and I think that's a positive thing that's been happening is that now, since that outrage and that outcry is going to be stifled by voices of saying, hey, let us have the things that we want. Um,
I,
and this actually is this flows right into Colonel Red Panda. He asked, how does it
I'm going to
make you
interrupt
feel?
just a
Oh,
sec.
go ahead.
I think if publishers and developers feel empowered to create the games they want to make rather than being constrained by the parochial concerns of one or another groups, even if those groups happen to either largely be in or have the assistance of the media, if the publishers and developers feel empowered to ignore those concerns to a certain extent and to focus on what the people who buy and play the games want, then that would be a massive win for gaming and gamers.
But until really recently, a lot of these people were their feedback was mostly from these sites, of course, and their feedback. But now there's again, obviously, anyone who is part of the industry as a whole. I'm talking about industry now, not indie. Indie is not part of the industry. That's a huge misunderstanding. Has looked at the past 4 months. They know what's going on. Whether they act on it is up to them. Whether they decide to be vocal about it is up to them. But again, they have seen that Twitter is a really useful tool for feedback, which I don't know why they didn't see that before. Maybe they did. Maybe it's not as important. But that's basically it. They've seen it. They know what's going on. A multi-billion-dollar industry is not gonna see this and go, yeah, it's nothing. It's stupid. They're gonna look into things.
That makes sense. And that, I guess, from our side of things, and the way that it's been kind of viewed is that there is a wall between what us as the consumers say versus what seems to be heard. And Colonel Red Panda, he asked, how does it make you feel when quote-unquote journalists contrive outrage? By the way, I just did air quotes. You guys couldn't see, but it was awesome. Contrive outrage and controversy on something as simple as box art, for instance, with Far Cry 2. Which seem to have gotten heard. I mean, and that's the thing is how does it feel when these journalists sort of pounce on something that to gamers is a non-issue? I mean, Far Cry, there were other things we could have been talking about with Far Cry 4 outside of the box art as a gamer concern. But do these journalists, are they seen as silly? I mean, when you guys, pick up the magazines or go to the sites, do you look at those headlines and go, what? The same way that we do? Or is their concern really taken to heart?
A lot of us shake our heads and go, for fuck's sake, to be honest. What happens is they're basically, what's the word, rebel. You can say rebel rousers. Like I really want to bring up Mass Effect 3. If you've noticed the trend, their journalists started the outrage for Mass Effect. They started that outrage, and when shit got too hot for them, they decided to blame it on entitled consumers. So that's one thing a lot of people don't take into account. A lot of the outrage is started by these sites taking things out of context. I mean, I'm not sure if they deliberately believe that, they take it out of context to be dishonest, but anyone with two shreds of common sense could say that that's just fucking box art. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Again, this is from my side, but these people have no idea what it's like to work on a game. So obviously, yeah. So I don't get what you think.
Yeah, and Panda followed up with, why has the most unnecessary element in video gaming, which is our current media structure, become so arrogant and overbearing? I mean, via Metacritic and everything else, and overbearing towards the driving forces in the industry, which is our developers and our gamers. And why, and again, from our end, it looks different, but why haven't publishers and larger developers sort of pushed back on the media while they've been sort of, I guess, getting very full of themselves?
Probably that I think they've gone on China so long. Because again, we've seen a lot of hubris, a lot of people who are really fucking cocky, and I strongly assume that quite early on next year they're going to be hit with quite a nasty thing of reality again. I'm not too sure about how it's all going to play out myself. But maybe they need to feel relevant, or they just got a big head. I really don't know. But there's a lot of people I honestly just like to give a good slap to be honest. I mean, they're the most irrelevant part of our industry right now. With the internet, YouTube, Twitter, these guys can be like erased over the course of a few months if they put their minds to it, because they are really irrelevant. Because the publishers own their own YouTube sites, so it's really up to but then it's up to consumers. They're the ones who are going to the site.
Is there a chance that publishers Is there a chance that publishers could start to move away from using Metacritic as a primary means by which they judge bonuses and everything?
All to do with business. I mean, right now, Metacritic. I'm pretty sure that it's pretty. The Metacritic criticism is out there now. It's quite sorry, my laptop just went off. It's quite vocal. So I'm sure Metacritic, they know. Maybe a publisher will start camping. We won't use Metacritic again and see how far that takes them. See if that gains in favor. I'm not too sure, but Metacritic. I'm not too sure unless a competitor pops up. But if these sites become more relevant than so Metacritic, at the end of the day.
See, this is the thing that it strikes me as the business decision is based on the notion that Metacritic is a valid proxy for the feelings and tastes and success that a game finds in the audience. Because the only thing you have to care about is sales, is how many people are walking up to the register and ponying up $60 or whatever in order to buy a new game, and that's what you're judging on, is how much sales you have. So Metacritic is only useful to the extent that the reviews that they include in it actually proxy the reactions of the audience. In other words, if the audience loves the game, it'll have good gaming scores. If the audience hates the game, it'll have low review scores. But if the reviews in Metacritic don't match what the audience actually feels about a game, that is, they're not serving as a valid proxy, then it's useless to the publishers to use that to judge the success or failure of a game, because it's going to be completely disjunct from what the audience actually likes, and it's only useful to the extent that it maps what the audience actually likes. I'm just wondering if some executives somewhere are beginning to realize, hey, these Metacritic scores are based on reviews. The reviews are written by these journalists who love things that the audience hates, who hate things that the audience loves, and therefore their review scores are not valid, and therefore the composite score that Metacritic presents isn't valid. I'm hoping that somebody somewhere wakes up and completes that chain of thought and begins thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't use Metacritic, maybe we should use some other way of measuring what the success of fulfilling the audience's expectations is. If one proxy for that measurement doesn't work, you have to pick another.
Well, again, Metacritic, it's such an easy number to slap on a box art, overall Metacritic score. My problem with Metacritic is obviously the exact same. My problem with Metacritic is the exact same problem TotalBiscuit brought up, so I'm not going to bother explaining that. I think they would do well to heed user reviews more now, since the journalists get their game for free most of the time, so their reviews don't even contribute to fucking sales. A user review, however, is a bought. They paid for it and put the review up. I think that's more important as a consumer and to the publisher, because they bought them, spent their time. There's going to be other trolley reviews, of course, but I think that's more important. If that's my view, though.
Okay.
Again, with the mute button, I am a fail. Now, the next few that I have are going to do with stuff that's sort of outside of your scope, but that I think, as a developer, I think that you would have a good perspective on. I haven't meant anything I've said so far in the stream to be a slag on writers and things like that in the industry. We've mislabeled people during this entire process as developers when they're in the writer position, so that's why I wanted to draw that line, not that I was saying it's a bad thing. But A_D_Felton asked, I actually have a question regarding the industry directly. Over and over we read that we have plenty of ideas, people, because every time you see streams there's folks in the chat saying, oh, I have this idea for a game, I have that idea for a game, and they get shot down really quickly. What would you recommend for those people who can't afford to go to college but still do have solid ideas for game creation and game ideas? I kind of have suggestions, but I'd like to hear what your ideas are.
Again, the first thing is, if you're nothing but an idea person, very, very short chance you'll get in. You have to teach, self-teach. A lot of people say make mods, and that's what I like. If you're an idea person and you can contribute in another way, coding, programming, whatever, that's fine. But you have to be more than an idea person, no matter what.
You have to have a useful skill that they want to employ you using it. Making the concept art, if you can do the concept art, writing well, if you can write the scripts for people to record, programming, or whatever, modeling, sound, if you want to be a Foley artist or whatever. You have to have something to offer the studio in order to get hired. They're not going to just hire you because they think that you can give them cool ideas and they'll go off and make it. That's what you're saying.
Basically, yeah. Unless you own the studio, you're the owner. If you're an idea person, that's not good enough.
And the thing that I would say is that there's so many tools out there right now to actually create content on your own, and I know there's a huge difference between AAA and indie and the products that are produced, but there's also an entire mid-range in there that often gets overlooked.
Like Twine, am I right?
No, don't be a brat, you. But there's a lot of mid-range studios that do make really gorgeous, high-quality games for PC that do sometimes transfer over into console. But if you have ideas and have things that you want to do, you can't afford college, sit your butt in front of the computer. I mean, make things, write things, reach out to other people. There's a lot of really brilliant, creative folks that are in the same boat, that can't afford school and can't afford to get a piece of paper that says they're good at what they do. So, network.
Well,
And speaking of indie, Gwen, the Lily Knight, who is at Gwen Lily Knight, actually asked, what does AAA think of indie, or parts of the indie scene? Do you guys even really look at what's going on there or keep a pulse on what indie is developing and what indie is putting out?
Indies, it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of potential at indie, obviously, but it's the reason why it depends. A lot of people in the industry have different views on indie. Some see them as a I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't want to broaden it, but indie can be as corrupt as they claim AAA can be because they can get really buddy with people. Whereas it's not the same because we're watched by suits mostly. But some people view indie as annoyances. Some people view it as up and coming people, possible recruits. It all depends. But indie is not at all clean. They're not pure. A lot of it is trying to get by on nostalgia. If indie's quite big right now, but I suspect if it carries on how it's going, there's going to be a crash, because we're seeing Kickstarter game before when Kickstarter used to raise millions. Like, they're getting less and less now. It's not. It is quite a broad. Indie's just. I don't know.
I think that's a lot of our view too. Is it's hard to define and to understand everything, and I would hope that nobody gives indie a pass and says that it's not corrupt. That would be. I'm sure. After all of the education that we've had thanks to our wonderful gaming media, that none of us would look at indie and go, "Oh, look, they're not nearly as bad as AAA." Just because you guys are under a lot of, at least, social chokehold in how you're able to behave and what you do.
It still stands. If you're selling a product, you don't get a free pass. That should be everyone's view, to be honest. So that's it.
If you're giving something away, you can make whatever the hell you want because nobody's investing in it. You're not cheating anybody. But if you're selling something, you need to make a product for your audience, however you define your audience, that they're going to want to spend that amount of money on and feel like they're getting value for it.
Yeah, basically, it all comes down to, again, if you're selling me something, no matter how much, there's no excuse. This goes for both indie and AAA. And also, the definition of indie, I would not class a lot of people who claim that indie is like Double Fine. You're not indie. Piss off. Just my view.
Now, I'm just reading through questions and trying to make things go in a normal order. Kind of to flip away from the indie stuff a bit, we had GG_sculptor ask, what agencies are most commonly used to find workers for games art? So I'm going to think that they mean like the packaging and promotion art and things like that for a game. Are there particular go-to agencies, if that was something you were interested in doing, that you would go to, or is it more direct hire? I don't know anything about that. Hadn't even crossed my mind. I mean, are those people part of the team or are they outsiders?
I don't really have a hand in that. I guess they obviously hired a mass producing company and you get one of the artists to do it up. I couldn't comment on. That's a good question. You have to ask someone who's actually an artist and does that, because that's not my role. I put finger to key. But it's. Shit.
Well, I will definitely keep it in the paste bin, and if there's any AAA artist out there, we've got questions for you.
Let me jump in here quick anyway. Because you just mentioned that, if anybody has any suggestions of people they know who are creative people, who are writers or artists or musicians or whatever, who would be interesting guests for Geekarific Gabfest, send a tweet to Remy, send a tweet to me, send a tweet to Doranal, and we'll talk to them and see about getting them up on the show. Next week, we have another developer, an indie game developer, Pixel Metal, is coming on the show.
Yeah.
We would like to get as many different people in as many different fields who are, creative people, geek people. Somebody works in comics, somebody works writing novels, whatever. Last week we had a short story writer, up-and-coming novelists on the show. As many of them as possible who want to come on, we would certainly love to have them on. So she's talking, Remy mentioned, if you know a AAA artist, bring them on the show, and I'm saying I'm expanding that. If you know other people who might be fun, who would be interested in coming on and talking to us just about what the stuff they do and the stuff they love, please send us a tweet. We will try to get them on. I have a note right in my notepad that Tashi TNE Alejandro Arganadana, man, I'm terrible. I'm a horrible person with names, who makes all those awesome, all the awesome illustrations, the monocolor illustrations. I am tweeting him after the show just to see if he wants to come on. Anybody like that, please let us know. All right.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I have another question that I think that actually putting fingers to keys, you would be somebody that could kind of walk us through this. So you have a writer, or you have somebody who comes up with a concept idea, and that's then fleshed out by the studio. What is the steps from that original concept to that game ending up on our local independent video game store shelf, because we don't go to places like GameStop? What are those steps from idea to in the box and us purchasing it?
That was a broad one. Let me it's the steps. It's you. Well, first thing, there's there's defined steps, but you can't. There's always going to be complications. Of course, it really actually depends on how you're doing the game. If it's a pitch, you got to build something first, then pitch it. If it's if it's someone approaches you with a license, then there's less. You just got to draw up the concept and start making the game. If it's a sequel to a game, it's pretty much been greenlit already. You just got to build it. It all depends on the type of a game is defined mostly by how it starts off, and then it evolves from there on, because you see like how it changes a lot. But mostly my role is the finger to keep. I'm not sure I should say what my actual role is. Should I?
That's okay. Finger to key is I think a solid enough explanation. Let's say it's a new concept. It's a game that it's going to be the first of its, because it seems like everything ends up being turned into series. Games aren't standalones anymore. It's original concept. Something that's new that's being rolled out. When it gets to you and the work that you do, is it already basically a completely planned project? I know writing much more than I know the video game creation process. So
it depends. Like, if you're an animator, you're probably going to get a hold to be doing stuff before the guy who makes the gameplay happen, per se, you know. So you do the animations, and the other guy works on the things that makes. I'm going to make this sound stupid now. That makes the buttons so the animations happen. So it really, like, everyone has a role, but they're working on things together, and communication is a key part. Obviously, it's fuck. I really don't know how to explain.
You have a massive team, all of whom have different roles and different things that they have to do, and project management is about making sure that each individual tiny part comes together at the right time to be able to put it all together finally. But so you can't discretely identify it and say, okay, here's step A, here's step B, here's step C, because a lot of these things are all being developed at the exact same time. You have people working on sound at the same time. You have other people putting together middleware for the AI, and other people doing whatever. It's not a linear, nicely linearized process. It's very, very amorphous and complex.
It's really hard to actually answer that without saying what I do, because I can explain my part from the process there onwards, but it's really hard for me to just answer that like using a really broad stroke.
And that's totally, completely acceptable. I get it. Actually, next question I think we already covered. Father Virgil. He asked, how does someone get involved in the industry and their writing capability? Have other marketable skills, have other things that will get your foot in the door, and get you to where you're able to do that. It sounds like being multifaceted is really an important part of the gaming industry at this point.
Well, and it also helps build a healthy career option because you're going to be moving from one company to another at some point. Everybody does. Even the super big names end up starting new studios, or their old studio they leave it or it collapses or whatever. And so the more things that you are actually able to do really, really well, the better your chances of moving to a new studio when it's time to make the move, or moving to a publisher, or moving, God forbid, into a media position, wherever you want to do. So if you can do concept art and great writing, then that's a plus. That means you can go for either of those jobs. If there isn't any one sure path to get in. You have to make sure that you have skills that are sellable to as many different employers as possible.
Well, when it comes to getting a job, again, I'll say it's only one. If someone comes in with a piece of paper saying they're qualified, and someone else comes in with like a working build or a mod, but he's home taught, if you can show the person what you've made, it's a better chance from what I've seen, he'll get in. But I've met so many people who've come in from different angles, like people came in straight from university or college, people have come in from previous experience, people have come out of nowhere. I'd say the same thing: school, make mods, prove what you can do, blah blah blah. But that's not the only way. There's so many ways to get in now. You just proof of workers. I'd say the best thing to do is just show someone what you can do, and the recommendations will happen. That's what I'd say.
That sounds like solid advice to me. The next question that we have, the person asked me to ask it anon, even though I think that they were worried about being embarrassed, but I think it's a perfectly legitimate question. They asked, are developers willing to accept, and I'm going to ask the question and then kind of reword it into Remy speak, but are developers willing to accept that while we mostly hate the current gaming media, we still want hard questions and criticism of games and of development to happen, that a lot of the current problems stem from questions and rhetoric that the journalists have actually been fairly soft with and sort of buddy-buddy with the industry. And then the things that they are hard on you guys about is nonsense and completely unimportant. So it's quality of game is not questioned, but length of skirt and things like that are questioned. Do developers feel comfortable with us wanting to sort of push back and say, hi, this game is a piece of crap, could you please take it back and do a better job? Is that something that criticism that you guys are open to hearing?
So I want to tackle this in a few different steps. Firstly, a lot of developers I know, and from what I understand, we think a lot of these people are basically scumbags. We don't like them. They focus on. You can see with certain reviews when they focus on a certain subject, and that doesn't really reflect on the game. We want valid criticism, good criticism, not biased, one-sided from con artists. We don't want. There's one thing I want to get. Objectivity, 100% objectivity is impossible, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try, right? I mean, if you want a good example, Total Biscuit, again, he's a great example. He's fantastic because he tries to be objective. But imagine put yourself in the shoes of the developer and you make a game, a genuinely good game. People love it, and then you're yelled at by angry mobs of people because some guy somewhere said it's sexist. Can you imagine being the people who worked really hard on that game, and the one thing to take away from it is an instance where you can punch a woman? Can you just that people don't seem to forget it. They don't let that sink in. You're being told this game's horrible, not based on what it is, but because of someone thinks something sexist when that's nothing. That's not the intention. No one in the industry is inherently sexist. But I'm getting a bit off topic. Yes, we want valid criticism. No, we don't think the current people are qualified. I mean, they're fucking amateurs. I mean, just no.
Excellent answer. I liked that one. Next question actually loops back to the very first question that I asked about why graphics are focused on. Sock Arena, we love you, Socks, asked why story dialogue and narrative from her perspective are just as important as graphics. I'm going to say for me as well. Why do those things get so neglected and so sacrificed? And you linked it with money, but for buyers, those are still the important things. I mean, if you look at Borderlands 2, that was an example that was given of stuff just not, it was poop. Um, how is that justified for you guys that are gamers and enthusiasts just as much as us? How do these publishers justify sort of flagging off with the story and everything else that gamers really, we like those things?
From some of the studios I worked at, what what I always tell people is the gameplay and story are all put on the same level pedestal, but as it goes on, bits from the story pedestal are put onto other things. It's because you can't advertise a story like you can advertise graphics and gameplay. You can't mean Spec Ops: The Line is a really good example. How could you advertise Spec Ops: The Line story over shooting people, for example? How so that's what you understand. Story is really hard to market, and anyone can say amazing story on the back doesn't make it amazing. So story is important, but at the end of the day, it's a game. So I will.
That makes sense.
I
Yeah,
always
because it's not like a movie, so you're not going to be hooking somebody in with tied to best-selling, heart-wrenching novel of last summer, um, kind of thing. It is unfortunate. I wish there was a better way to market that. I think that things like now we have a lot of people who do Let's Plays and things like that that really show the care that can go into the storytelling in a game and promote those aspects without, I mean, and that's effortless for the studios. I mean, they don't even have to do anything. It's just enthusiast online sort of promoting their product for them and showcasing the things that are, oh, people are being funny in the chat, sorry. But um, that they're able to kind of do for them and show like, hey, as a gamer, this is important to me, and look at me playing the game, and you can see those aspects as well.
Hello.
We're still here.
We're still here.
It just carried on. My speakers are kind of crap. Anyway.
That's okay.
Okay.
But yeah, and do you think Let's Plays, I mean, do you enjoy that sort of thing and that sort of, you know, promotion of games? Is that something that's looked positively on?
Let's Plays is great advertising because a lot of Let's Plays also play old games, which get those games notoriety. It all depends on the personality, of course, but Let's Players, YouTubers, people, they are really looking at those markets now. And a few especially targeted sites. But yeah, Let's Plays can be, if used right and any affiliations disclosed, fantastic. They're a great tool to advertise, basically. You can see reactions, you can see it from people playing. It's not just Let's Plays is a great idea. That's my word on it.
I've never actually watched one, like, ever.
I used to watch Geek Gab.
I think they're great. I greatly enjoy them. They're a big bonding point for my daughter and myself.
I think Geek Gab has lost his edge. So, but that's just me.
Yeah, I watch Fluff. I mean, everybody, I think anybody who knows me and has seen anything I've been on or read anything that I've written knows that I'm a big fluffy bunny. So I watch folks like Markiplier and Cryotic and guys like that who are just, I mean, they're just big teddy bears. And even though they play, horror games and things like that, they're just adorable. And watching them play games is fun. And my daughter is a huge wuss and afraid of the dark and all of those things, and because these guys are so nice, like I can cuddle up with her, watch them play a horror game that I might not have otherwise been able to get her interested in, and it's cool. And they introduce me to developers and games that I wouldn't have necessarily heard of. I don't watch a lot of, like, I know everybody, I'm even afraid to say it, I know everybody loves TB and a lot of other people like that, but I don't know. I like the fluffy bunny guys that are sort of funny and silly. They play games the way that I play them, and that's why I like to watch them.
You know, if I ever did a Let's Play video, it would reveal both how bad a player I am and how much I swear at the things that happen because I'm a bad player, and I just don't know. I just don't know that people are going to want to sit there and listen to me yell the F word every 5 minutes or 4 minutes or 3 minutes, however long it is to get past a place, and watch me try to redo something 4 or 5 times. I'm just not sure that's going to be audience pleasing.
If millions used to tune into PewDiePie yell rape jokes for like half an hour, I'm pretty sure they'd tune into to bloody yell F words.
Well, and Pewdie is cute. I will give him that. He is good at marketing his adorableness. But I don't know. I get nervous. Like I had somebody challenge me. I made a mistake and brought up Call of Duty in front of a hardcore Call of Duty player, and the dread that filled me, like it was this icy cold chill came over my body, and I was like, oh my God, I'm about to have my butt kicked.
I'm gonna be unpopular here, but what do people say about Call of Duty? There's no denying how technically sound it is. I don't care what anyone says. It's a technically sound game. So.
Well, and he was big. I play it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I absolutely 100% play it, and I don't, console pleb or whatever else. I like what I like. The story kind of wah wah, but for gameplay and for a first-person shooter, Call of Duty gives me what I want. I was big into Halo, and it started to feel a little repetitive for me. Call of Duty, I enjoy. First off, I enjoy the smack talk and that aspect of it. People slag off on the Call of Duty community all the time, but it is a community. It speaks its own language. Yeah, people are mean, but that's kind of the joy of it, is that I'm nice, 99% of my time, and that 1% that I'm in my little Call of Duty box that I'm allowed to say really nasty things to other people, it's a release. It's cool. But no, I've always thought that they were sound games. I always thought they were solid, and they're able to bring people into gaming and into our world that wouldn't necessarily be there anyway. Same thing with sports games. People, slag off on sports games all the time and are like, oh, he's a sports game casual. But having worked, in face-to-face gaming retail, those guys that come in and buy sports games keep the lights on. So
that's important. Call of Duty FIFA, they're popular for a reason. And because Call of Duty and FIFA exists, people get their one-off games like, their Dragon Age, their Mass Effects, all these new things. Those games, like I said, those games, fun those games. So hate them all you want. But, if they weren't the big sales they were, you may not have had some of the greatest games that existed before. So that's
yeah,
like
exactly. And I always shy away from terms like casuals and stuff like that and they get labeled with these big budget casuals, like people who aren't hardcore gamers, who don't sit and play for hours on it. But honestly, I think I'm technically a casual because I'm a mommy and I work a ridiculously large amount of hours. Do I want to be a casual? No, man. If I could be plugged into my systems 24 hours a day, heck yeah.
I define like the type of games. I define a casual by how invested you are. If you're a hobby, you're not casual. But that's a broad term. I don't want to be the dev who labels.
Whoa! Shot fired in chat. Somebody just said that GameStop has the best prices. Homie, find a small local independent retailer. We have better prices. If you are in Western New York, I'm not gonna shill. Never mind. There are places. There are options.
No, that guy's been dropping troll comments the whole.
Okay, because I'm like, yo, no, okay. Nobody likes GameStop.
Okay.
Oh, and it is. Wow, this is what I was saying earlier, Mighty. Like, we're out of time. Like, the show goes by so super fast. This has been a super joy. I really thank you so much for coming on and talking with us.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say in close before we go?
Should I say fuck Macintosh? But
okay. Shots fired, yo.
I'd also say don't stop what you're doing. Just you'd be surprised how much people are being yelled at to get back to work and get off Twitter right now. So yeah, just keep what you're doing.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on. It's been awesome. Remy, do you have anything to say?
I love you guys. It's been a rough few days out there in Twitter land. If anybody needs a hug or somebody to vent on, I am at RemipunX. I am going to start streaming a lot more on my Hitbox. I will show myself for a second. RemipunX on Hitbox. If there's games you'd like to see me play, let me know. I've been playing some pretty derpy stuff like 100% Orange Juice. And I'm going to try and be around more. Sorry I've been so absent lately. I love you guys. Be safe. Mwah.
Okay, and I'm going to say something real quick. To those of you listening, I put this up here because I thought it was funny. The Super Secret Mystery Unknown AAA game dev. And I know a lot of you were looking forward or needing to know the identity or at least proof of their employment in the field. And I want to explain to you why. I started this show the very first time the show went on the air. This was Daddy Warpig's Hour of Bullshit. Because it was me just getting on the air talking about whatever I wanted that was geek-related for an hour. Got some co-hosts. We started having some great guests on, and that's when it became Geek Gab, the Geekariffic Gabfest. But at the same time, the entire purpose of this show is to give you an hour where you can just come on and listen and ask questions in chat and listen to us and our guests talk about fun things, about geeky things. No stress, no work, all fun. And this is not a journalism show. This is not an investigative journalism show. This is not anything serious, and that's why I, as your host, decided to go ahead with that and not present any, because our guest tonight is very protective of his privacy for very good reasons, and we are not going to breach that at all. He had some... and that was just a commitment I made. And I decided it would be worth it to bring him on, ask him questions, have some fun. And I think the last hour has shown that that was a good decision. So if you're upset or if you're disappointed that I didn't back up my claims, I'm not making any substantive news claims, and I'm not pushing any interview. This is not like X-Pro or not like another news story where I'm claiming to break something like... corruption in the industry. We're not accusing people of anything. We're not presenting evidence of anything. This is a conversation with someone who had a cool point of view that was open to sharing it with the audience of the show. So that's why I'm not presenting any proof. That's why I'm not substantiating it, because there are good concerns on behalf of our guest about their privacy, and I am respecting that because this is a show that is all about the fun. That's the only reason we do this show. Give you, the audience, and us, the hosts, a chance to de-stress from the past week so we can go on and do the stuff we need to do for the next week. 1 hour of fun every week. Geekarific Gabfest, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you like the show, subscribe, click the up thumb. Come back in a week. We have all of the previous Geek Gabs available to listen to stream on YouTube or to download also on YouTube, but you have to do some crazy stuff to do that. I'm sorry, I just assume that everybody here can do that. I realize now that that may not actually be the case. In any case, every Sunday night, 7 p.m., I, your host, Daddy Warpig, my co-hosts, usually RemipunX and Dornall. You can catch RemipunX at her Hitbox. We're going to put the link to that in the description to listen to her do Let's Play videos, which sounds awesome. You can catch me, your host, on the House of Geekery, daddywarpig.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at daddy_warpig, at daddy_warpig, and at RemipunX. That's an X at the end. Again, links are in the description. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to the show. We want to let you know that we will be back.